And hello and welcome to this episode of Divorce Explained. It's Steve Benmor, and I'm here with my esteemed colleague, Leanne Townsend. And we today are going to be discussing the subject of men, divorce, and the hidden mental health crisis. The reality is the vast majority of our cases involve men and women. Yes, we represent same-sex couples, but most of the time it's men and women. And in those relationships, we have noticed over the years that there is sort of a more common reaction to the ending of a relationship by men and women. Our experience has been that our female clients tend to be much more expressive and open and sort of identifying and letting everyone know, including their lawyers, us, of how difficult things are. But today's episode is to talk about our experience and thoughts regarding the very same reaction to separation and divorce by our male clients, which is very different. And as a result of all of that, Leanne and I have had an opportunity over the years to read a lot of social science literature and psychology journals about why is that the case? Why is it that men have shown a different reaction to the ending of a relationship than their female partners? And so that is our topic of today. And I'll pass it on to Leanne, who will share some of her insights in that regard.
Yeah, hello everybody. It's a really interesting dynamic, and there is a difference, generally speaking, between men who are going through divorce and women who are going through divorce. Just in that women, I think part of it's natural and part of it is just how we're raised. We're raised to talk about things more. We're raised to share our feelings. It's more acceptable for us to share our feelings and to talk, about our emotions and things like that with our girlfriends or, with our moms or our other family members. So when a woman is going through a separation and divorce, which is very stressful, whether you're male or female, research shows that divorce, next to death of a spouse, is life's most stressful event. So it's very difficult and challenging for anyone going through it. But women more naturally, and maybe again because it's more socially accepted, reach out to their friends and talk about it and get advice from their friends and whatnot. Whereas men are, generally speaking, less apt to do that. When men get together with their buddies, maybe they go watch a hockey game or they talk about work-related stuff and things like that, but they're not usually as prone to talk about how they're feeling about their divorce and their emotions and what's going on. And so they don't naturally have that support in their lives the same way that women often do. And in addition, in my experience with the profession of divorce coaches, I find that my female clients tend to be more apt to work with a divorce coach, for example, than some of my male clients. Now, again, that could just be my own experience, but I found that women are more open to working with a coach, just like they often seem to be more open to working with a therapist. If if they're going through divorce, a lot of people, probably all of us, could really benefit from having a therapist in our lives. But again, women are more open to it. And so I think this openness to other resources and to sharing feelings makes it easier for women to have the support that they need when they're going through divorce versus feeling like they have to do it all alone, which is, I think, how a lot of men feel. And then that's what leads to the mental health struggles that we see.
And we'll get to the mental health struggles in a few moments, but I just want to share with you a recent experience that I had. I was involved in a case recently where the debate was what was the date of separation, which, for those that don't know, that's a whole other area of litigation in family law matters, where people are fighting over which was the date that they split up, because that affects the valuation of their assets and their debts for the purposes of sharing and equalization. But bringing it back to men and mental health, and Leanne's point, nothing could be more obvious than what was written in Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus on that point, because during this 8-hour cross-examination, what came out was that when they split up, she told all of her friends and her family. He told nobody for a couple years. And he explained that for the first year, he did not want to disclose any of his problems to anybody. And in the second year, he didn't feel that there was a need to share it with anybody. It was his personal information and he didn't need any help and support. And so it was a very stark example of how the very same event might be reacted to differently in that situation by two different people who happen to be from two different genders. And that may have influenced how they perceived the experience. But what I would like to talk a little bit about is the social science. And over the years, I've been curious. I want to know, why is it? Why is it that my male clients generally are more reserved, stoic, silent, very corporate about their divorce? Yet my female clients, certainly even in my presence, are much more willing to be vulnerable and expose their hardships and cry and say, I can't talk to you right now. I'm in such pain. I don't get that from my male clients. And it made me wonder why. I mean, there are some male clients who have cried in my office, yes, who have expressed difficulties, some who have even shared with me suicidal ideation, but it's rare. It's rare. And I was curious why. And one thing that came from my research, and just as a disclaimer, I'm a lawyer, I'm not a psychologist, and I'm certainly not a researcher, but what I learned from the reading is that the relationship that the man has with his spouse, in many cases, might be a provider-dependent relationship. And so when the provider loses the dependent, the trauma is different than when the dependent loses the provider. So that's one way of analyzing it. Again, I don't know if that's true in all cases or even one case, but that's what I read. The other one is that men feel on a much shallower level than women. The feeling part, the depth of emotional trauma is felt differently by men than by women. And so the very same movie that might cause a woman to cry, the same man watching the same movie might be troubled by the movie, might be feeling something by the movie, but the depth of the feeling is different by the two genders, and the depth of the trauma of divorce different by the two genders. And then the third one is the expression. So there's feeling, and then there's the expression. And so women, apparently, are much more expressive than men, and men who might have the exact same feeling are not opening their mouths up and saying, right now I am feeling fill in the blank, anger, fear, stress, distress, hunger. They express those feelings less. So we've got some explanations for why this is the case, but at the end of the day, divorce is divorce is divorce, and it is an experience that is experienced emotionally.
And I don't know if this could be even a further explanation for it, but I know that a lot of the research shows that, particularly in the gray divorces, a lot of them are initiated by the women. There's quite a lot of middle-aged or older and older couples where the woman is the one initiating the divorce, and it's kind of like the children have grown, they've left the home, the couple's now, they're empty nesters, and the woman is more troubled by, feeling that the parties have grown apart, or, the children were the thing kind of keep the glue keeping them together, and now the children are out of the home. And so there is research showing that it's often women who are initiating divorce. So whether that means they were disconnected, years before and hadn't been happy for a long time. So when they go into the divorce part, they've already been dealing with some of the mental health part or the emotional part, whereas maybe the men are more taken aback sometimes by the fact that the wife wants to end the relationship. And I don't know if that's a possible explanation. But I also know that it's interesting, like even in the family law industry or the family law space, that with the resources out there, particularly that, resources for therapy or resources for coaching and resources that deal more with people's feeling and mental health, they tend to be provided more by women. There's not as many male therapists, for example. I see a lot more female therapists in the divorce space. Divorce coaches, I see more females who are divorce coaches than I do males, although there are certainly, some males in both of those professions, but it tends to be more female dominated. Whereas the business evaluators or the income assessors or the accounting side of things, I find there tends to be more men in those roles. And there are women, of course, and there's some great women in those spaces, but there tends to be more men. And so, again, I don't know, like that's just to do with, I think, historical, there's lots of history as to roles that women go into and men go into and things like that. But I think that particularly the part with the feelings part, it is interesting that if a man, and I don't know if a man feels more comfortable talking to a woman or talking to another man. I mean, that would be something maybe Steve, you could even comment on, but it does seem like a lot of the providers in the mental health space tend to be more women.
It's a very fair observation. When we look around and we walk through the halls of a hospital, why is it that nurses are mainly women? And when we look at all of the family lawyers in Ontario, why is it that very few men go into family law? And the more and more new lawyers who come into family law, they are mostly women. And we are living in a funny world right now where, you know, when you say the word judge, it more likely is a woman than a man. Or when you say the word lawyer or president or whatnot, you know, you can't just necessarily conclude what gender that person might be. But from where we sit, Leanne, we definitely see far more resources provided by women for women than services for men, which could be by women, and services for men by men. And is that because the marketplace doesn't provide it, or is it because the consumer public doesn't want it? My guess would be the latter, because over the last 30 plus years of doing this sort of work, I don't really see many men saying to me, Mr. Benmor, can you please refer me to a therapist or a divorce coach? I need help. I don't get that. I get that from my female clients. And so my answer to the latter is because the marketplace is responding to the consumer demand, and the consumer demand by men for support services is lesser than for women. And bringing it back to our topic, men divorce in the hidden mental health crisis. The fact of the matter is it's hidden partly by genetic makeup. Men just don't disclose. So it's hidden. And partly by people like you and I, we could do a better job outing it. So when we have male clients in our office, there's nothing wrong in the privacy of a certain client relationship to say, just so that you know, you seem like you're all together. And that's great. But just so that you know, it's okay to be in pain, and it's okay to seek support and help. And if you think that I can help, maybe make a referral or introduce you to somebody, just let me know, because this is a painful experience and you have the right to have your pain addressed with an appropriate professional, whether that's a divorce coach or a therapist.
Yes, and I think that really is the main message or main takeaway that we want listeners to take from today's podcast, is that if you're out there and you're going through separation or divorce, whether you're male or female, but I'm particularly speaking to the males today because of our topic, it's okay to need help. Lots of people do. There are resources out there. There's wonderful resources. You just have to be open to reaching out and receiving them. But you don't need to go it alone. There's no shame in needing some support as you navigate through one of life's most stressful events. So please, if you're struggling, you can reach out to Steve or I, and we would be happy to get you in touch with the right supports that you need. So thank you for joining us today. We will be back again next time with another episode of Divorce Explained.